If you had told me the girl I found dripping on my porch in the middle of a cold November storm would end up changing every quiet corner of my life, I would have laughed and gone back to my engine. My name is Ethan. I am 24 and I fix cars for a living. It is not the kind of job that gets you a corner office or some big title, but it keeps the lights on and the fridge full enough. I work at a small shop just outside Portland, Oregon. By now, half the people in town know me as the guy who can make an old truck start when everyone else says it is dead. I live in a creaky old house on the edge of the neighborhood. It is the same house my parents left me when they died in a car accident 6 years ago. The paint is peeling on the siding. The porch groans every time you step on the middle board. Out back there is a garage where I spend most of my nights, under the hood of a '78 Chevy that has not moved under its own power in years. I always say I will restore it. Someday. The neighborhood is quiet in that settled way. People mow their lawns on Saturdays. Kids ride bikes in loose circles on the street. Folks wave if they catch your eye, then go back to their own lives. I keep to myself. Always have. It is easier that way. No expectations. No one asking how you are when they do not really want to know the answer. Most days are the same. I wake up, pull on a flannel shirt and jeans, grab coffee from the chipped mug I use every morning, then drive to the shop. I wrestle with oil leaks, busted transmissions, and customers who swear the strange sound started out of nowhere. At the end of the day, I come home, toss a microwave dinner in, and let the radio play old rock tunes while I eat. I am not saying I am unhappy. This is the life I built after everything fell apart, and I am proud I kept it together. But sometimes at night, when the house is too still, the quiet gets loud. I think about how it smelled when my mom was cooking, or the way my dad used to yell at the game in the living room. That is when I head to the garage. I crank up the music, grab a wrench, and lose myself in the guts of an engine until my hands hurt and my mind goes blank. That night started like any other. It was late November, the kind of cold that sneaks into your bones. Rain had been pounding on the roof since dusk. The single bulb in the garage flickered like it was thinking about dying. The radio was halfway through a Springsteen song. I was elbow deep in the Chevy's engine bay, cursing at a stubborn bolt that did not want to move. Grease coated my fingers, and the smell of oil and metal hung thick in the air. I was thinking about nothing and everything when I heard it. A knock at the front door. It was faint, almost lost under the sound of the rain, but it was there. I stopped, the wrench still in my hand, and listened. Nobody knocks on my door. Not at 11 at night. Not ever, really. Then I heard it again. A second knock, a little softer, like whoever it was not sure they should be doing it. I turned the radio down until the music was just a murmur. My heartbeat felt louder than the song. I grabbed an old rag, wiped my hands as clean as I could, and stepped out into the rain. The cold hit me right away, cutting through my shirt. The porch light threw a weak yellow circle over the yard and the wet grass. I opened the door. She was standing right there on my porch. She looked about my age. Her dark hair was plastered to her face, soaked through. Her thin jacket was streaked with mud and clung to her like it was more water than fabric. She did not have a bag, no umbrella, no suitcase, just herself and the storm clinging to her skin. Her lips were a little blue from the cold, but her eyes were steady, wide brown eyes that looked like they had already seen too much for one night. "Sorry," she said, her teeth almost chattering but her voice still steady. "I know it's late, but can I come in for a bit? I got lost and my phone's dead." Every part of me went on alert. I am not the type of guy who just lets strangers into his house. But there was something in her face. She did not look drunk. She did not look like trouble. She looked scared and tired and like she was holding herself together by threads. "Yeah," I heard myself say as I stepped aside. "Come in. You're soaked." She slipped past me into the living room, water dripping from her hair onto the floor. The smell of rain and cold air followed her in. "Hold on," I said. I went to the bathroom and grabbed the cleanest towel I could find. When I came back, she was standing there looking around like she was trying to memorize the place. The faded wallpaper, the old couch, the stack of car magazines on the coffee table. "Here," I said, handing her the towel. "Dry off. I'll get you something warm." "Thanks," she said, wrapping the towel around her shoulders. Her fingers trembled as she pulled it tight. I went into the kitchen, put water on for tea, and dug out a dusty box of chamomile I had not touched in years. While the kettle heated, I kept glancing back at her. She looked smaller, wrapped in that towel, but there was a kind of quiet strength in how she stood, like she refused to collapse. "Nice place," she said after a moment, her eyes still moving over the room. It sounded like she meant it. "It's old," I said, "but it works." I leaned on the counter. "I'm Ethan." She turned toward me. For the first time, our eyes met. "Sophie," she said. "And yeah, I know, I look like a drowned rat. Long story." The kettle whistled. I poured the tea and handed her a mug, her fingers wrapped around it like she was afraid it might disappear. "I got time," I said. "You stuck out here in the middle of nowhere. Might as well talk." She let out a small breath that was half laugh, half sigh. "Short version," she said, "I was hitching a ride back to college. University of Oregon. I'm a senior there. The guy driving got the wrong idea. We argued. He kicked me out a few miles back. I didn't realize it was this far from anything." A muscle tightened in my jaw. "He hurt you?" She shook her head fast. "No. Just scared me and left me in the rain. I saw your light on. Figured it was better than walking until I froze." I nodded, my chest tight. "You're safe here," I said. The words came out before I knew I was going to say them. "You can crash on the couch tonight. I'll drive you to a bus stop in the morning." Her shoulders relaxed for the first time since she walked in. She pulled the towel a little closer and sank into the armchair near the old gas heater. "You live here alone?" she asked. "Since I was 18, I said. "Parents passed." "Car accident. I stayed to keep the house." Her eyes softened. She did not say, "I'm sorry," like most people. She just nodded, like she understood that some things do not have neat words. "You're kind of a saint for this," she said quietly. I snorted. "Hardly. Just don't like seeing people freeze." I grabbed an old blanket and tossed it to her. "You good here?" She pulled it over her knees and gave me a tired smile. "Yeah, for the first time today I am." I turned off the lamp in the hallway and started toward my room. Her voice stopped me, soft as the rain outside. "Ethan," she said. "Yeah?" "I'm glad it was your door I knocked on." Quote. I stood there in the dark for a second, my hand on the doorframe, feeling something shift in the empty house. "Yeah," I said. "Me too." At the time, I thought it was just one night, a stranger in a storm, a couch, a blanket, a hot drink. I had no idea that knock was the start of the first real story my life had seen in years. I woke up the next morning thinking maybe I had dreamed the whole thing. The rain had quieted to a steady drizzle. The house creaked the way it always did when the pipes woke up. I rolled out of bed, pulled on a clean shirt, and walked into the living room, half expecting the sofa to be empty. But Sophie was still there. She lay curled up under the old blanket, one arm tucked under her head, my hoodie swallowed around her shoulders. Her hair was messy from sleep, dark strands falling across her face. Her breathing was soft and even. For a second, I just stood there watching the light from the window slide across her and thought, this is the first time this house has not felt completely alone in 6 years. The coffee maker hissed as I started a pot. The smell filled the kitchen. The sound must have woken her because she shifted, rubbed her eyes, and peeked over the back of the couch. "Morning," she said, her voice rough but warm. "You always up this early?" "Shop opens at 8, I said. "Grease waits for no man." She smiled, pulling the blanket around herself like a cocoon, and sat up slowly. "You got any coffee that isn't instant?" I held up the mug. "Real stuff." "Nothing fancy." She padded into the kitchen, bare feet light on the hardwood, still drowning in my hoodie. I handed her a cup and dug out some eggs and a loaf of bread from the fridge. "Not much of a chef," I said, "but I can manage eggs and toast." "You're already above my skill level," she said, taking a sip. "This is heaven." We ate at the small kitchen table, chipped edge and all. The rain tapped the window beside us. It felt like the world had shrunk down to the crack of toast and the clink of forks on plates. "So," I said between bites, "University of Oregon, huh? What are you studying?" "Art," she said, mouth twisting. Painting, mostly. Quote, I raised an eyebrow. That why your parents are so thrilled about your life choices? She huffed a laugh. They own a real estate company downtown. They think art is something you hang in a lobby, not a job. They've got this whole blueprint for my life. Business degree, office, husband in a suit, house with perfect lawn. I'm supposed to just step into it when I graduate. And you don't want that? She stared at her fork for a second. I don't even know what I want yet. I just know it doesn't feel like that. She lifted her eyes to mine. Being here last night, even with the storm and the creepy heater, I could actually breathe. I did not know what to say to that, so I just nodded and took another bite of toast that suddenly felt like it had a lump in it. After breakfast, I grabbed my keys. Come on, I said. I'll drive you to the bus stop. You'll be back at school by noon. The drive was short, 10 minutes down wet streets lined with tall evergreens and mailboxes leaning sideways. Sophie watched the trees go by, fingers wrapped around the travel mug she insisted on bringing. You really like cars, huh? She asked. Yeah, I said. Engines make sense. You treat them right, they usually treat you right back. People aren't like that? Not always. She looked at me for a moment, then went back to the window. I think that's why I like painting, she said. Can't control people. Can't control a canvas. We pulled up to the bus stop, a lonely bench with a cracked plastic shelter. I put the truck in park. Well, I said, trying to keep it light, this is your stop. Try not to get kicked out of any more cars. She turned toward me, eyes soft and serious. Hey, Ethan. Yeah? What if I came back sometime? Not because I'm lost. Just to talk, to hang out. Would that be weird? The answer jumped out of my chest faster than my brain. No, I said, then tried to play it cool. I mean, sure. If you're okay hanging out in a falling-apart house with a guy who smells like motor oil most days. She smiled, really smiled, and it hit me harder than the coffee. I kinda like the smell, she said, and your house isn't falling apart. It feels real. She opened the door, hopped down to the sidewalk, then leaned back in. I'll bring donuts next time, she added. You look like someone who needs better breakfast. Then she was gone, walking toward the bus with her hood up, and I was left alone in the cab, watching her get smaller in the side mirror. The truck felt too quiet on the drive back. The house felt even quieter. But now the silence had her shape in it. She showed up again that weekend. I was in the garage with the radio low, working on a carburetor, when I heard a knock on the side door. When I opened it, Sophie stood there in a denim jacket dotted with rain, holding a paper bag from the bakery in town. Brought donuts, she said. Told you I would. I could not fight the grin that spread across my face. Come in before you melt. She walked into the garage, looking around at the tools, the half-finished projects, the old posters on the walls. This is your kingdom, huh? Something like that, I said. Watch your step. There's probably a wrench somewhere waiting to kill your toes. She laughed and hopped up onto an old stool near my workbench, tearing open the bag. The smell of sugar and fresh bread cut through the oil and metal. From then on, it became a pattern. She came back the next weekend. Then the one after that. Sometimes with donuts. Sometimes with coffee. Sometimes with nothing but a sketchbook under her arm. She would sit on that same stool and watch me work, swinging her feet, asking questions about spark plugs and hoses like they were part of some foreign language she wanted to learn. I showed her how to change a tire, how to check oil, how to listen for a misfire in an engine. She got grease on her cheek once and I told her she had a stripe like war paint. She just laughed and left it there. One Saturday morning, she convinced me to let her cook. We tried to make pancakes in my tiny kitchen. She burned half of them because she kept talking and forgetting to flip them. These are a crime, I said, chewing anyway. Shut up, she said, throwing a napkin at me. Art major, remember? Not a chef. Good thing, I said, or you'd starve. She stuck her tongue out at me, but there was a warmth in her eyes that made my chest feel tight. Little by little, pieces of her started slipping out between the jokes. Her parents, pressure. How her dad would send her links to business articles and apartment listings in the city. How her mom had already mentioned a nice boy whose family we know more times than she could count. They've got my whole life drawn out in their heads," she said one rainy evening as we sat on the couch, her legs tucked under her, a mug of tea in her hands. "The only thing they forgot to ask was if it's the life I want." "And is it?" I asked. She stared at the steam rising from her mug for a long moment. "No," she said finally, "but I don't know how to tell them that without everything falling apart." She looked around my living room like she was seeing it for the first time. The framed photo of my parents on the mantel, the old guitar in the corner I never played anymore, the worn rug with a stain from a spilled soda years ago. "Out here, with you," she said. "I don't feel like a project someone's trying to complete. I feel like just me, and I like that version of me more." I felt something shift inside me at those words, something careful and scared and hopeful, all at once. I did not call it anything, not yet. But I started counting the days between her visits, started leaving the porch light on a little longer, started looking at the clock on Saturdays, listening for her knock. One afternoon the rain was coming down hard again. I was in the garage under the hood of a '65 Mustang I was trying to resurrect. The place smelled like wet concrete and gasoline. The bulb overhead buzzed. The side door creaked open and a gust of cold air rushed in. Sophie stepped inside, shaking water off her jacket, holding 2 steaming cups of hot chocolate from the diner down the road. Her cheeks were pink from the cold. Her hair was damp at the ends. "Thought you could use a break," she said, pushing the door shut with her hip. "It's a monsoon out there." "You walked through that just to bring me cocoa?" I asked. "You're going to catch pneumonia." She shrugged and set the cups on the workbench. "Worth it. Besides, I like watching you work. You get this focused look, like you're trying to fix more than just the car." The comment landed between us, heavier than her usual jokes. I handed her a rag for her hands and picked up my wrench again, trying to act normal, but the air in the garage felt different. Warmer, even with the rain hammering the roof. Charged. She hopped up onto her stool, cradling the hot chocolate between her palms, and watched me in silence for a while. The only sounds were the rain, the soft clink of metal, and both of our breaths. I could feel her eyes on me more than I could feel the wrench in my hand. Something was about to give. I just did not know what yet. The rain kept pounding the garage roof like it was trying to push its way in. The light above us buzzed, throwing a soft yellow glow over the Mustang, the tools, the oil stains on the floor. And over Sophie, sitting on that stool, watching me like I was the most interesting thing in the room. I bent over the engine, trying to focus on the fuel line, but I could feel her eyes on me, not in a casual, passing way. Heavy, intent. "What's that one do?" she asked, pointing toward a hose near my elbow. "Coolant line," I said, without looking up. "Keeps the engine from overheating." She was quiet for a second, then said in a softer voice, "Like you." I froze. My hands kept moving, but my brain stalled. "What?" "You keep things from overheating," she said. "You make everything feel calmer, even when it's a mess." I straightened up and finally looked at her. She was not staring at the car anymore. Her eyes were on me, brown, steady, shining a little in the low light. That playful edge she always had was still there, but under it, there was something more. Something that made my chest feel tight. I tried to joke it off. "I'm just a guy with a wrench, Sophie." She slid off the stool and stepped closer. "You're more than that," she said quietly. Her boots scuffed the concrete as she closed the distance between us. Now, she was standing only a couple feet away, close enough that I could see the raindrops still clinging to the ends of her hair, close enough that I could smell cocoa and rain on her skin. "Ethan," she said, my name coming out like something she had been holding in for a long time. "I've never felt like this with anyone before." My heart slammed against my ribs. "Like what?" "Like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be," she said. "Like I could stay here in this drafty garage with you and your stubborn Mustang and old rock songs, and it would be enough." The wrench slipped from my hand and clattered to the floor. The sound echoed around us, but neither of us looked. Before I could say anything, before I could even decide if I should pull back or step closer, she made the choice for both of us. She leaned in and kissed me. It was soft at first, A careful brush of her lips against mine like she was asking a question. I answered without thinking. I kissed her back, my hands finding her waist, pulling her the rest of the way in. Her lips were warm, tasting faintly like chocolate in rain. The rest of the world fell away. No engine, no storm, no ghosts in the house. Just her, and the pounding of my heart, and the feeling that everything in my life had just slid into a different gear. We pulled apart after a few seconds, but it felt longer, like time had stretched to fit the moment. Sophie's eyes were wide, her cheeks flushed. She looked surprised, but not unhappy. More like she had just jumped off a cliff and was realizing she had not hit the ground yet. "If I said I wanted to stay here forever," she whispered, "what would you say?" I swallowed. My hand was still at her waist. I could feel the steady rise and fall of her breathing. "I'd say you're crazy," I said, my voice low and rough. "But I'd also say I've never wanted something that much in my whole life." A small laugh broke out of her, shaky and full at the same time. "You're from a different world, Sophie," I added. "Your parents, your plans, your school, I don't know how any of this works." Quote. She shook her head and lifted her hand to my jaw, her thumb brushing the edge of my beard. "I don't care about that," she said. "I care about this, about you, about how it feels when I'm here." Her fingers were warm against my skin. I closed my eyes for a second, trying to commit it to memory, in case this was the last time I ever felt it. That night, we never left the garage. I spread an old blanket on the floor by the Mustang and we sat with our backs against the cool metal, her shoulder pressed into mine. The rain softened outside, turning into a light patter, like the sky was finally calming down. We talked for hours. She told me about her dad, about his real estate company, the way he walked into every room like he owned not just the space but the people in it, about her mom and the charity parties and the endless talk of networking, opportunities, future husbands. "They talk about my life like it's a puzzle they're putting together," she said. "I'm just the picture on the box they keep pointing at." I told her about the night of the accident, how the police knocked on the door, how the house felt too big and too small at the same time, how I tried college after that, and how sitting in a classroom felt pointless when there was a house to keep, and a grief that did not fit between lectures. "I stopped letting people in," I said. "It was easier than watching them leave." She looked at me like every word mattered, like I wasn't just some mechanic trying not to fall apart. "You let me in," she said softly. "Yeah," I said. "I did." At some point, her head found my shoulder. Then my arm found its way around her. Her breath slowed, her body relaxing against mine. The garage was cold, but I did not feel it. I felt her hand resting on my chest, her fingers curled in the fabric of my flannel. I could have stayed like that forever. Eventually, we moved inside. Not because the moment ended, but because the concrete was killing our backs. We made coffee in the dim kitchen light, bumping into each other, laughing quietly like the house might wake up and scold us. She slept in my bed that night. It was not rushed or wild. We were tired and wrung out from talking and feeling more than either of us had in a long time. We lay facing each other, her hand resting between us on the blanket, mine covering it. "Last night was real, right?" she asked in the gray light of early morning, her voice small but steady. "Yeah," I said, staring at her in the half-darkness. "Real as it gets." She smiled, the kind of smile that stays in your chest long after it leaves someone's face. For a couple of days, it felt like we were living in a small, secret world. We made coffee together in the mornings. She drew quick sketches of the Chevy or the Mustang in her notebook while I worked. Sometimes she would press a paint-stained thumbprint to my arm and call it modern art. She burned pancakes again, and I pretended not to like them while eating every bite. She teased me for the way I muttered at stubborn bolts like they were listening. We did not define anything. We did not say the words relationship or together. We did not have to. It was in the way her hand found mine when she walked past me, in the way my eyes went straight to the door at the sound of her footsteps. I thought, stupidly, that maybe we could keep it that way. 3 days after the kiss in the garage, we were in the kitchen, laughing about her failed attempt to flip a pancake. Again, she had just thrown a dish towel at me when tires crunched on the gravel outside. Something about the sound made my stomach drop. Nobody with money lives on this road, so nobody with a car that's smooth ever comes this far unless they are lost. Or looking for something. Or someone. I wiped my hands and stepped to the window. A sleek black Mercedes sat in my driveway, polished so clean the gray sky reflected on the hood. The doorbell rang. Not a timid, soft tap. A firm, sharp press. Sophie's face went pale. The spatula slipped from her fingers and hit the floor. "Who is that?" I asked, even though I already knew. She swallowed. "My dad." For a second, everything in the kitchen went quiet. The rain, the hiss of the pan, even my own breathing. "Your dad?" I repeated. Sophie nodded. Her face drained of color. "He must have tracked my phone. I turned it back on yesterday." The doorbell rang again, sharper this time. "I'll get it," I said, even though my chest was tight. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and walked to the front door. When I opened it, a man in a dark coat stood on my porch. His hair was threaded with gray. His shoes didn't have a speck of mud on them, and his eyes took in my house like he was appraising a property he did not want. "I'm James Riley," he said, voice clipped and sure. "Sophie's father. I believe my daughter is here." Before I could answer, I heard her footsteps behind me. She stepped into the doorway, just behind my shoulder. "Dad," she said quietly. "I'm here." His eyes moved from me to her, and they softened for half a second before hardening again. "Get your things," he said. "We're leaving." Sophie's hand brushed my back, small and quick, like she was steadying herself. "Dad, Ethan has been helping me," she said. "He's the reason I'm safe. The guy who picked me up kicked me out in the middle of nowhere. Ethan took me in." "Mister," Riley gave me a short nod that felt more like an obligation than respect. "I appreciate you looking out for her," he said, "but this situation is inappropriate. She's been gone for days. Her mother is beside herself. This ends now." Something in me flared hot. "With respect, sir," I said. "Sophie's not a kid. She wasn't in any danger here." His eyes cut back to me, sharp as glass. "With respect, Ethan, it's my job to decide when my daughter is in danger, not yours." Sophie stepped around me so she was between us. "Stop," she said. "Ethan hasn't done anything wrong." "Did you sleep here?" her father asked, his jaw tight. She hesitated. That was enough of an answer for him. His hand closed into a fist at his side. "Get your bag," he said through his teeth. "We'll discuss the rest at home." I looked at her. "You don't have to go like this," I said, my voice low. Her eyes met mine, full of things she could not say with him standing there. "I'll be right back," she whispered. She went to my room and grabbed her jacket, her sketchbook, the few things she had scattered around the house that had started to feel like they belonged. When she came back, her shoulders were squared, but I could see the way her fingers shook on the strap of her bag. "I'm sorry," she said to me, and it felt like she meant it on more levels than one. "Thank you for everything." "That's it?" I asked, trying to keep my voice from breaking. "After all this?" Quote. Her mouth trembled. "I don't want to leave like this," she said. "I just don't know how to fight him. Not yet." Her dad cleared his throat. "Sophie." She flinched, then stepped past me onto the porch. "Goodbye, Ethan," she said, and the word goodbye felt wrong in her mouth. I couldn't think of anything smart or strong to say. Just be safe. She gave me one last look, then walked to the black Mercedes. The car door shut with a dull, final thud. The engine started, and they disappeared down the road, red taillights fading into the gray. When the quiet came back, it was louder than it had ever been. The pancakes burned on the stove. I turned off the burner, threw them in the trash, and leaned both hands on the counter, staring at the spot where she had stood 10 minutes ago, laughing about how she always ruined breakfast. The next 3 weeks blurred together. I went to the shop, fixed cars, nodded at customers, came home, watched the light shift across the living room walls. The house felt like it had grown bigger overnight, every empty room echoing. Her sketchbook sat on my workbench in the garage. I found it one evening after closing up the shop, half hidden under a rag. On the open page was a drawing of the Mustang, lines loose and soft, but somehow capturing more than the shape. She had shaded in little smudges of light on the chrome like she knew where it would shine when it finally ran again. I closed the cover and put it in a drawer. I could not bring myself to move it any further away, but I could not leave it out either. Days passed. No knock, no text. We had never exchanged numbers, never needed to. She had just shown up, like rain or sunrise. Now she was gone, like she had been a season that ended before I was ready. I told myself to be smart. She had a life, a family, a whole future in front of her. Maybe her father convinced her this was a phase. Maybe she decided I was just a stopover on her way to something bigger. I went back to the way things were before. Work, radio, late nights in the garage. Only now the silence did not push everything away. It brought her back, every time. Her laugh, her paint-stained hands, the way her head had rested on my shoulder in the dark. I stopped turning on the porch light. It hurt too much to watch it glow over an empty yard. It was a Tuesday night when everything changed again. I had just finished tightening a bolt on the Chevy when the rain started. Not a storm this time, just a soft, steady curtain of drops. I left the garage door cracked to listen to it. The radio was off. I could not stand music that night. Then I heard it. 3 soft knocks on the front door. My heart jumped so hard it almost hurt. For a second, I did not move. I just listened. Maybe it was a delivery guy. Maybe it was a neighbor. Maybe I was hearing what I wanted. The knock came again. Same rhythm as always. Careful. Not demanding. I dropped the rag and walked to the house. My hands were greasy, my hair a mess, my shirt stained from the day. I did not care. I opened the door. Sophie stood on my porch, under the weak circle of the light. Her jacket was damp around the shoulders. Her hair curled at the ends from the mist. She held a paper cup carrier with 2 cups from the diner. Her eyes looked tired, but clearer than I had ever seen them. "Hey," she said, her voice soft but steady. "I brought tea." "I figured you might be out." I stared, trying to catch up to the fact that she was actually there, that the space where she had not been for weeks was filled again. "Sophie," I said, and my voice came out rough. "What are you doing here?" She stepped a little closer. The porch creaked. "I'm sorry," she said, "for leaving like that. For not calling, for taking so long." "You didn't have my number," I said. It was a stupid thing to say, but it was the only thing my brain found that did not sound like "don't leave again." She gave a small, sad smile. "I could have found a way," she said, "but I was trying to figure out if I was brave enough to come back. Not just to your house, to you." She lifted her chin, eyes meeting mine. "I told my dad everything," she said. "Not details, not our details. But I told him I'm not going to business school. I'm not joining the company. I'm finishing my art degree and I'm making my own choices. He didn't like it. He cut me off. No more money, no more safety net. But I feel lighter than I ever have." I stood there on the threshold, rain misting behind her, the warmth of the house at my back. "So you came here," I said. "I came where I want to be," she answered. "If you still want me here." The fear in that last line did something to me. I stepped aside without thinking. "Get in here," I said, "before you freeze." She smiled fully then, the kind of smile that had haunted my quiet nights. She walked past me, carrying the tea, her shoulder brushing mine. The house felt warmer the second the door closed behind her. We sat in the living room, her on the couch, me in the chair, the heater humming like always. She handed me a cup and held her own between both hands. "So," I said, "you cut loose from the perfect life plan and came to the guy with the falling-apart house and the half-dead Chevy. Not sure that's a great trade." She shook her head. "It's the best one I've ever made," she said. "My parents' house was big and perfect and cold. This place is cracked and warm and real. You're real." I swallowed. "You know this isn't going to be easy, right? I don't have money like they do. I can't promise you fancy dinners or vacations." She looked around the room slowly, taking in the photo of my parents, the old rug, the chipped table, the doorway to the garage she now knew as well as I did. "I don't want easy," she said. "I want honest. I want mornings with bad coffee and you complaining about broken bolts. I want a pain in your garage while you yell at engines. I want this, if you still do." Quote. She set her cup down and leaned back against the couch, watching me like my answer mattered more than anything. My heart pounded, but my mind felt strangely calm. For once, I knew exactly what I wanted. I stood up and crossed the room. She watched me the whole way. I sat beside her on the couch, close enough that our knees touched. She looked at me, eyes shining. "Ethan," she said quietly, "is there space left in your bed?" It was not a joke. It was not about sleep. It was a question about my life, my heart, my house, all of it. I let out a breath I did not know I was holding and gave her the only answer that ever made sense. "There's space if you want it," I said. "But what if you said you wanted to stay forever?" Her eyes filled, but she smiled. A real, bright smile that reached every corner of her face. "Then," she whispered, "I'd say, move over and make room." I laughed, and the sound felt like it shook the dust off the ceiling. I pulled her into my arms, and she came willingly, pressing her face into my chest, her arms wrapping around my back like she was anchoring herself there. We stayed like that for a long time, just breathing. The rain outside faded to a soft whisper. The heater hummed. The house that had once felt like a museum of old memories now felt like something new was being written inside it. Later that night, she set her bag down by my bedroom door. Not like a guest, like someone coming home. Her toothbrush appeared next to mine. Her sketchbook went back on the workbench in the garage, not hidden this time. We lay in my bed, the same one that had felt too big for years. She curled against me, her head under my chin, my arm around her. The bed did not feel big anymore. It felt right. "Hey," she murmured in the dark, "just so you know, I can't promise I won't burn pancakes again." I smiled, my hand tracing slow lines on her back. "Good," I said. "I like them that way now." She laughed softly, and the sound settled into the walls. I had spent years thinking my life was set. Fix cars, go home, avoid getting close so nothing could hurt more than it already had. Then one night, a stranger knocked on my door in the rain, soaked and lost and shaking, and asked for a place to stay. Now she was here, asking if there was space in my bed, in my life, in the future. I never let myself imagine. And for the first time since the accident, I was not afraid of what came next. Because, whatever it was, I knew this much. There would always be space beside me for the girl who chose my falling apart house over a perfect, empty life. And if she wanted to stay forever, I was done pretending I did not want that too.